For centuries, the book of Revelation has fascinated and terrified believers. This final book of the Bible describes cataclysmic events, the rise of the Antichrist, divine judgment, and the ultimate victory of good over evil. But what if the version we know today is incomplete? What if a passage revealing an even greater truth was removed, erased from history to control how humanity perceives the end of days? The idea of a lost prophecy from the book of Revelation is not as far-fetched as it may seem. Throughout history, various texts have been omitted from the biblical canon, either due to theological disputes or because they presented narratives that did not align with the Church's growing authority. But Revelation, being the most mysterious and cryptic book in the Bible, has always been subject to interpretation and perhaps even manipulation. Some scholars and theologians argue that the book of Revelation, as we know it, was altered, edited, or even censored at some point in history. There are gaps in its structure, unexplained references to other prophecies, and even missing context in certain passages. Could it be that an original portion, one that might have contained a crucial prophecy, was deliberately removed? The origins of the book of Revelation are as mysterious as its content. Written by John of Patmos, it is believed to be a divinely inspired vision of the apocalypse. However, the dating and authorship of the book have long been debated. Some evidence suggests that different versions of Revelation circulated in the early Christian world before the final text was officially recognized. If variations of this book existed, could one of them have included a prophecy that never made it into the official version? One of the most compelling clues comes from early Christian writings. Some ancient sources reference apocalyptic texts that no longer exist today. The Shepherd of Hermas, a widely read Christian text in the early centuries, contains visions that closely resemble Revelation but were eventually excluded from the Bible. Similarly, the Book of Enoch, which describes cosmic battles and divine judgment, was left out despite being highly regarded by early Christians. These omissions raise the question, was there a version of Revelation that suffered the same fate? The Council of Nicaea, 325 AD, played a decisive role in shaping the Christian doctrine and determining which texts would be included in the Bible. Though Revelation was ultimately accepted into the New Testament, there were heated debates about its authenticity. Some early Christian leaders opposed its inclusion, claiming it was too symbolic, too dangerous, or even too difficult to interpret. Could it be that an original version, one with a prophecy too controversial to be revealed, was discarded in favor of the text we have today? Adding to the mystery, several manuscripts of Revelation from different historical periods show slight variations in wording and structure. Some contain additional details, while others are missing entire sections found in other versions. While most of these changes are considered minor, they raise an unsettling possibility. What if a more significant passage, one that revealed an alternative vision of the end times, was completely erased? The Vatican's vast archives have long been suspected of holding secret manuscripts, including lost biblical texts. Could the missing portion of Revelation still exist, hidden away in the depths of these forbidden vaults? Some researchers believe so. In fact, there are accounts of scholars claiming to have seen references to unknown apocalyptic writings within Vatican records, only to be denied further access. If such a prophecy truly existed, what could it have revealed? Could it have described a different fate for humanity, an alternative vision of salvation, or even a prediction that contradicted the established doctrines of the Church? The implications are staggering. If the original version of Revelation contained information that challenged the authority of religious institutions, it would explain why it was removed. The mere possibility of a lost prophecy about the end times raises countless questions. Who would have had the power to erase it? What knowledge was considered too dangerous to be known? And most importantly, is there a way to recover this lost revelation? As we delve deeper, we will explore the ancient texts that were excluded from the Bible, the mystery behind the lost apocalyptic writings, and the theories about what this missing prophecy might reveal. Could it change everything we know about the end of days? The search for answers has only just begun. For centuries, many ancient writings have remained buried, hidden, or deliberately erased from religious history. While the Book of Revelation stands as the defining prophecy of the end times, it is far from the only apocalyptic text that once circulated among early Christians. Some of these writings presented alternate visions of the apocalypse, described different roles for the Antichrist, or even questioned the nature of divine judgment. But why were they excluded? And more importantly, could they contain clues about the lost prophecy of Revelation? The Dead Sea Scrolls, discovered in 1947 near the ancient settlement of Qumran, revealed some of the earliest known Jewish and Christian apocalyptic writings. Among them was the War Scroll, which details a climactic battle between the forces of light and darkness, an eerily similar theme to Revelation. Other texts, such as the Book of Jubilees, describe angelic conflicts and visions of destruction that parallel John's prophetic visions. Yet, these texts were dismissed from the biblical canon, left out of official teachings, and forgotten by mainstream Christianity. Could the same fate have befallen a lost prophecy from Revelation? Another critical missing piece is the Book of Enoch, an ancient text that was highly influential in early Jewish and Christian thought. Enoch, the great-grandfather of Noah, was said to have received divine visions of the end of the world, fallen angels, and the ultimate judgment of mankind. His writings describe the Nephilim, the mysterious race of giants wiped out in the Great Flood, and detail an apocalyptic reckoning unlike anything found in the accepted books of the Bible. But despite its widespread use among early believers, including direct references to it in the New Testament, the Book of Enoch was excluded from the Christian Bible. Why? Some scholars argue that its descriptions of cosmic war and divine intervention did not align with later church doctrine. Others believe it contained esoteric knowledge too powerful to be shared with the masses. If an entire book detailing apocalyptic events could be erased, could it be that an essential passage from Revelation suffered the same fate? Beyond the ancient Jewish texts, some early Christian writings also contained radically different portrayals of the apocalypse. The Apocalypse of Peter, a lost gospel discovered in an Egyptian tomb, offers a vivid and terrifying vision of the afterlife, one that was once considered for inclusion in the New Testament. Unlike Revelation, which focuses on the cosmic battle between Christ and the Antichrist, the Apocalypse of Peter describes the torment of souls in hell, detailing the punishments reserved for sinners. Its exclusion raises an important question. Was the selection of biblical texts purely theological, or was it also political? If different apocalyptic visions were circulating at the time, the Church may have chosen the version of Revelation that best suited its message, one that reinforced institutional authority rather than encouraging alternate interpretations of the end times. Then there's the Shepherd of Hermas, a widely respected Christian text in the first few centuries that was almost included in the Bible. It contains cryptic allegories about the apocalypse, divine punishment, and spiritual purification, but ultimately it was left out. If such an influential text could be discarded, it strengthens the possibility that an alternative vision of Revelation, or an extension of it, was removed as well. The most unsettling question remains. If there was a lost prophecy about the end times, what did it predict? Could it have presented a different sequence of events leading to the final judgment? Could it have warned of an Antichrist rising from within religious institutions rather than from a political force, as commonly interpreted? Or even more drastically, could it have suggested that the true end of the world would come in a way completely different from what the modern Bible describes? The exclusion of these apocalyptic writings suggests that early religious authorities had a reason to control the narrative of the end times. The Book of Revelation, while cryptic, was ultimately accepted. But was it altered? If an original version contained a prophecy too dangerous or revealing, it could explain why we only have the version we know today. As we continue, we must now ask, what exactly did this lost prophecy reveal? Was it simply another vision of destruction, or was it something that could rewrite our understanding of the apocalypse itself? Throughout history, religious texts have been altered, omitted, or even erased to serve specific theological and political agendas. But what if the most crucial prophecy, the one that could redefine how we understand the apocalypse, was deliberately removed? If such a lost passage from Revelation existed, what secrets did it hold? Could it have revealed an entirely different vision of the end times, one too dangerous to be known? One of the most compelling theories is that this lost prophecy contained an alternative description of the Antichrist. The Book of Revelation, as we know it, describes the rise of a great deceiver, a figure of immense influence, who will lead many astray before the final judgment. Traditionally, the Antichrist has been interpreted as a political or military leader, a force of evil that will dominate the world through power and deception. However, some scholars suggest that an earlier version of Revelation, or a missing section, may have described the Antichrist not as a foreign ruler, but as someone within the church itself, a religious figure who corrupts faith from within, misleading millions who believe they are following divine truth. If this was part of John's original vision, it would explain why it was removed. Such a prophecy would have been too dangerous for the early church to acknowledge. This theory aligns with certain apocryphal texts that describe false prophets rising in the last days, not from external threats, but from within religious institutions. The Apocalypse of Paul, for example, presents a chilling vision of religious deception, warning that even those who claim to speak in God's name can lead the faithful into destruction. Another shocking possibility is that this lost prophecy did not foretell an apocalyptic battle at all, but rather a spiritual transformation, one that the church did not want people to discover. Some alternative interpretations of Revelation suggest that the true meaning of the end times was never about global destruction, but rather about a period of great awakening where humanity would reach a new level of consciousness and connection with the divine. Could the missing prophecy have revealed that the apocalypse is not a physical event, but a shift in human understanding? Some ancient Christian sects, particularly the Gnostics, believed that Revelation was not about external catastrophe, but about internal enlightenment, a message that would have threatened the authority of organized religion. If John's original writings pointed to an individual path to salvation, rather than one dictated by religious institutions, it would have been reason enough for those in power to suppress it. Another theory is that the lost prophecy provided specific details about the timing of the apocalypse. The Book of Revelation, as it stands today, gives symbolic clues but no exact timeline for the final judgment. But what if an original version included an explicit time frame, one that has already passed, or one that contradicts the eschatological teachings of the Church? If an ancient text had once revealed when the world would end, it would have created chaos throughout history, leading to mass panic or even the collapse of religious structures. There are whispers among scholars that certain Vatican documents reference apocalyptic manuscripts that do not appear in any known biblical collection. Could it be that these documents contain traces of the missing prophecy? Some believe that hidden within the Vatican archives lies a forgotten gospel or a suppressed section of Revelation that offers a version of the end times dramatically different from what has been taught for centuries. The implications of such a revelation would be staggering. If the prophecy foretold an apocalypse caused by human actions rather than divine intervention, it would shift the entire theological narrative of Christianity. Instead of waiting for God's judgment, humanity would bear the responsibility for its own fate. This idea aligns with certain Jewish and early Christian mystical teachings, which suggest that the destiny of the world is shaped not by an external force, but by collective human consciousness and morality. There is also speculation that the lost prophecy described an alternate fate for Satan himself. The current book of Revelation states that after his defeat, Satan will be cast into the lake of fire for eternity. But some apocryphal texts, such as the Gospel of Nicodemus, contain alternate versions of Satan's fate, some suggesting he could be redeemed or that his role in the divine plan is more complex than simply being the ultimate evil. Could it be that the missing passage from Revelation contained a final twist to the cosmic battle, one that challenges the black and white narrative of good versus evil? If so, it would have been too controversial, too destabilizing for the early church to allow it to remain. The search for this lost prophecy continues, with scholars, historians, and theologians piecing together fragments of ancient texts, searching for hidden clues in old manuscripts. If this passage ever resurfaces, it could change everything we know about the apocalypse, the Antichrist, and the final judgment. But the question remains, was this prophecy truly lost, or was it hidden on purpose? If a prophecy within the book of Revelation was truly erased or hidden, one of the most important questions we must ask is, who had the power to remove it, and what was their motive? Throughout history, religious institutions have carefully shaped doctrine to maintain spiritual and political authority. Could it be that a lost passage of Revelation was seen as too dangerous, too disruptive, to be allowed into the final version of the Bible? One of the earliest and most influential events in shaping Christian doctrine was the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, convened by Emperor Constantine. This council was responsible for solidifying key theological doctrines and determining which texts would be recognized as sacred scripture. Although Revelation was ultimately included in the New Testament, many early church leaders debated whether it should be accepted at all. Some feared its apocalyptic imagery and cryptic symbolism were too open to misinterpretation, while others questioned its authenticity altogether. This raises an important question. Was an alternative version of Revelation circulating at the time, one that included prophecies that the council found too dangerous? If so, could they have ordered its removal to create a more controlled and uniform interpretation of the end times? Another key moment in the suppression of controversial texts was the formation of the biblical canon in the 4th and 5th centuries. By this time, church leaders sought to create a standardized set of teachings that would unify Christianity under one theological framework. Many apocryphal writings, some of which contained alternative visions of the apocalypse, were explicitly banned. Books such as The Apocalypse of Peter and The Shepherd of Hermas, once widely read by early Christians, were excluded because they presented different ideas about judgment, salvation, and the final days. Could it be that a prophecy within Revelation was also deemed too controversial, and rather than removing the entire book, only certain passages were eliminated? Some ancient Christian texts hint at lost apocalyptic revelations, suggesting that alternate versions of the end times were once widely discussed among early believers but were later suppressed. Another institution with both the means and motive to control access to biblical knowledge is the Vatican. The Vatican Apostolic Archive, formerly known as the Vatican Secret Archive, is one of the most heavily restricted repositories of historical documents in the world. For centuries, it has housed manuscripts, papal decrees, and censored religious texts, many of which have never been made public. Some researchers believe that hidden within these archives are early versions of biblical texts, including suppressed passages from Revelation. In the 16th century, the Church took even more drastic measures to control religious writings. The creation of the Index Librorum Prohibitorum, list of prohibited books, ensured that certain theological ideas were actively censored. Any document that contradicted church teachings or suggested alternate interpretations of Scripture was banned. It is possible that documents related to the missing prophecy of Revelation were among those silenced during this time. But what exactly made this prophecy so dangerous? There are several possible reasons why religious authorities might have wanted to erase it. 1. It challenged the church's authority. If the prophecy suggested that salvation was personal and direct, rather than dependent on religious institutions, it would have undermined the growing power of the clergy. Satiricity. It provided a different interpretation of the end times. If the lost passage described an apocalypse that did not align with church doctrine, it could have caused divisions and theological disputes. 3. It revealed a secret about the Antichrist. Some scholars speculate that the missing prophecy may have identified the Antichrist as coming from within the church itself, a revelation that would have been politically devastating. 4. It contained a timeline for the apocalypse. If the prophecy gave a specific date for the final judgment, its suppression would prevent public panic or theological crisis if the prophecy's date did not align with church teachings. 5. It spoke of a different spiritual destiny for humanity. Some lost Christian texts suggest that the apocalypse is not an external event, but an internal transformation, a belief found in certain Gnostic traditions. If Revelation originally included such an idea, it would have been incompatible with mainstream Christian teachings. There are historical hints that even early Christian leaders knew that parts of Scripture had been altered. Some writings from the first few centuries of Christianity contain references to missing books of prophecy, which no longer exist today. Could these have been alternate versions of Revelation, containing the lost prophecy? Even today, there are rumors that hidden manuscripts exist in private collections, ancient monasteries, or locked away in restricted Vatican archives. Some researchers believe that evidence of this missing prophecy could still be found, if only access to these documents were granted. But if such a prophecy was indeed removed, the ultimate question remains. Was it erased simply to maintain theological order, or was it hidden to prevent the world from knowing a truth that could change everything? If a lost prophecy from the book of Revelation were to be uncovered, its impact would be nothing short of earth-shattering. For centuries, Christianity has been built upon a specific interpretation of the end times, one that has shaped not only religious beliefs, but also political movements, societal structures, and global conflicts. But what if the missing prophecy contradicted everything we think we know about the apocalypse? The most immediate effect would be on Christian theology itself. If the lost passage altered the sequence of end-time events or provided a different vision of the Antichrist, the final battle, or the return of Christ, it could force theologians to reconsider long-standing doctrines. Churches around the world might face divisions and theological disputes as believers struggle to reconcile this new revelation with their faith. But beyond theological implications, this discovery could destabilize religious institutions in a way never seen before. The Catholic Church, as well as many Protestant and Orthodox branches of Christianity, base their teachings on the current version of the Bible. If a lost prophecy emerges, proving that key events were altered or omitted, how would these institutions respond? Would they acknowledge it as authentic or attempt to discredit it? A discovery like this would also have a profound psychological effect on believers. Many Christians live with the expectation that the world will end in a specific manner. The rise of the Antichrist, global chaos, divine judgment, and finally, the return of Christ to establish a new kingdom. But if the missing prophecy describes an entirely different outcome, it could shake the faith of millions, forcing them to question whether they were misled about the fate of humanity. One of the most controversial possibilities is that the lost prophecy provided an actual date or time frame for the apocalypse. The current version of Revelation is cryptic, filled with symbolic numbers and imagery, but never gives an exact timeline for the final judgment. If the missing text contained a specific prophecy about when the world would end, it could lead to mass hysteria or, at the very least, a radical shift in how people view their future. A historical precedent for this can be found in millenarian movements, groups throughout history who believed that the world would end at a specific time. In the year 1000 AD, many Christians were convinced that Christ would return, causing widespread panic and religious fervor. More recently, failed apocalyptic predictions, such as the 2012 Mayan calendar prophecy, have demonstrated how deeply people can be affected by the belief that the end is near. Another shocking possibility is that this prophecy revealed an unexpected fate for the Antichrist. Traditionally, the Antichrist is depicted as a global ruler who deceives humanity before being defeated by Christ. But what if the missing passage offered an alternate vision, one where the Antichrist was never defeated or where humanity itself had to fight against its own corruption rather than waiting for divine intervention? This could change the entire dynamic of Christian eschatology, shifting responsibility from waiting for God's final judgment to actively shaping the fate of the world. If the missing prophecy placed the burden of salvation on human actions rather than divine intervention, it could rewrite everything we understand about faith, morality, and destiny. There is also the question of Satan's role in the apocalypse. Revelation describes him being thrown into the lake of fire for eternity, but what if the lost passage provided an alternate ending? Some apocryphal Christian texts suggest that Satan was not a purely evil being, but a necessary part of the divine plan, and that his fate might not be as simple as eternal punishment. If this missing prophecy revealed a twist in the final battle between good and evil, it could completely reshape how we understand the cosmic struggle of the Bible. From a historical and political standpoint, the revelation of a hidden prophecy would raise serious questions about church authority. If it was proven that an essential part of Revelation was removed, it would fuel conspiracy theories and erode trust in religious leadership. Governments and institutions that have relied on Christian teachings for centuries might face legitimacy crises as people begin to wonder what else has been hidden or altered over time. There is also the possibility that this prophecy spoke of an apocalypse that has already happened, or one that has been misunderstood. Some interpretations of Revelation suggest that it was never meant to predict a future event, but rather describe a past or ongoing struggle between good and evil. If the lost passage confirmed this theory, it would completely change how believers view prophecy, shifting focus from waiting for an end to actively shaping a better world. But perhaps the most unsettling possibility is that this prophecy was hidden because it contained a warning, a truth too dangerous for the world to know. What if the lost passage didn't describe the end of the world, but the end of deception? What if it revealed who truly controls history, religion, and the fate of humanity? If such a prophecy were ever found and released, the reaction would be explosive. It would not just be a theological debate, it would be a turning point in human history. The final question remains: if this prophecy exists, can it still be found? If a lost prophecy of Revelation truly exists, one of the most pressing questions is, can it still be found? Could this missing passage, which may have been hidden for centuries, still be waiting to be uncovered in an ancient manuscript, a forgotten archive, or even beneath the Vatican itself? The search for lost biblical texts is not just speculation, it is a historical reality. In the last century alone, several ancient Christian writings, once thought to be lost forever, have been rediscovered. The most famous example is the Dead Sea Scrolls, a collection of manuscripts found in caves near the Dead Sea in 1947. These texts, dating back over 2,000 years, contain previously unknown writings, alternate versions of biblical books, and apocalyptic prophecies that had been lost to time. Similarly, the Nag Hammadi Library, discovered in Egypt in 1945, revealed a treasure trove of early Christian and Gnostic writings, including alternative gospels and apocalyptic visions that had been buried for centuries. If these texts, hidden for thousands of years, could be uncovered, could the missing prophecy of Revelation also be waiting to be found? One of the most controversial theories is that the Vatican itself holds suppressed biblical manuscripts within its secret archives. The Vatican Apostolic Archive, one of the most restricted and mysterious collections of documents in the world, is known to contain thousands of unreleased religious texts, ancient scrolls, and documents related to church history. Some scholars believe that within these archives, early versions of biblical books, including a more complete version of Revelation, might still exist. There have been claims by researchers who, after being granted brief access to restricted Vatican materials, reported seeing references to unknown apocalyptic writings. But without full transparency, we may never know the extent of what remains hidden. However, there are other potential locations where this missing prophecy could surface. Some ancient monasteries, particularly in Greece, Turkey, and Ethiopia, still contain early Christian manuscripts that have never been fully studied. In recent years, previously unknown biblical texts have been found in monasteries on Mount Sinai and within Eastern Orthodox libraries, proving that the past still holds many secrets. Even modern technology is helping to uncover lost writings. Using multispectral imaging, researchers have been able to recover erased or damaged texts from ancient manuscripts, revealing hidden layers of writing beneath the visible ink. Could a lost passage of Revelation be hidden within an early manuscript, waiting to be revealed with the right tools? But if this prophecy does exist, what would happen if it were uncovered today? Would religious institutions acknowledge it? Or would they attempt to dismiss it as a forgery? Would the world be ready for a new revelation about the apocalypse, especially if it contradicted long-held beliefs? Some experts argue that even if the prophecy were found, it would never be accepted by mainstream Christianity. Religious institutions have spent centuries building their teachings upon the version of Revelation that exists today. Introducing a new prophecy could lead to theological chaos, division, and uncertainty, something the Church would be highly motivated to avoid. Yet history shows that truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how long it has been buried. The discoveries of the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Nag Hammadi texts, and other ancient writings have already challenged traditional biblical interpretations. If a lost section of Revelation were ever found, its impact could be just as profound. The final question is not just where this prophecy might be, but whether the world is prepared to confront its implications. If it contained a message different from what we've been told, would people accept it, or would they reject it out of fear of the unknown? For now, the lost prophecy of Revelation remains one of the greatest biblical mysteries. Whether hidden in the Vatican, buried in ancient ruins, or simply erased from history, its truth may still await discovery. But one thing is certain: if it is ever revealed, it will change everything we know about the end of days.